Shedeur got on the field. You watching the game, Chad, there's a lot of Shedeur Sanders fans. What did you think of his first outing?
Listen, all the talk and the narratives and the storylines and whatever you want to say, sooner or later that ball was about to snap. And that young man we watched in Colorado.
This is crazy! Shedeur Sanders didn't just sign a deal, he finalized a flagship endorsement. It's the kind of move that makes analysts revisit assumptions and recalibrate valuations. Nike didn't simply issue a contract, the company put substantial backing behind him and positioned him as a leading figure in its athlete portfolio. The impact is immediate across the sports industry. Shedeur Sanders has reset expectations and changed the competitive field.
What I just said about the shoe opportunity that could present itself for Nike, who's a Nike school. And the reason I say Nike is because it's a Nike school. They don't want another brand with the kid wearing them on field, but they get him head to toe. Okay, not just off the field. They can get him head to toe with a signature shoe. If he had that right now, and you mentioned record-breaking Colorado State, Skip, how many eyeballs would have seen that? What did you call it, Michael? Number 2, prime 2.
Shedeur Sanders finalized an agreement that forces analysts to revise their projections. Moments earlier, many expected Nike to prioritize other quarterbacks. Instead, Sanders signed and moved to the center of the discussion. The deal signals clear commitment from Nike and resets expectations across the sports business. Speculation has been replaced with a definitive statement about his market position and upcoming campaigns.
Shedeur was fantastic last night. I'm rooting for him to succeed in the NFL, but this is a little too much here, right? This is just a little too much. Last night after the game, Nike drops an ad, only a matter of time, with the caption, when you get your opportunity, create your next one. I get what they're doing. They probably hit their social media impressions and engagement goals last night because this went off. But the bottom line is, save this for when he wins a regular season game. This is the kind of stuff why people don't like Shedeur. It's not Shedeur himself. He's a good kid. He's a good role model. He's a good quarterback. But people trying to boost him up like this for a preseason start is why we have issues.
Analysts were surprised by the announcement and quickly reassessed prior assumptions that focused on other candidates. Nike did not make a routine addition, it secured a headline athlete. Shedeur Sanders brings national visibility, measurable performance, and a recognized family legacy. For months, some experts claimed he had attention without the depth major brands seek. This agreement signals Nike's conviction in his long-term value and directly challenges that earlier skepticism.
Shedeur Sanders for MVP already. Now, let me not take it too far, but it's another example of how quick and fast Nike is with their marketing. Perfect. Shedeur is the perfect athlete to work with. He's unique. He sticks to himself and his family for the most part. He's marketable. He's charismatic. He smiles. All of the above. And Nike is so quick with the timing. They say only a matter of time.
Nike reached a different conclusion. The company made a clear commitment, and the commentary that dismissed the possibility is now being revised. The announcement is not the beginning of the story. It is the outcome of a trajectory that has been building for some time. Shedeur Sanders' rise has been unconventional and decisive. He drew sustained attention even when many claimed not to be watching. More than a position on the depth chart, he delivered presence, audience growth, and momentum. In this case, market impact and leadership qualities carried as much weight as traditional metrics, and Nike acted on that assessment.
Did y'all see about like the business side of it, like his contract? Like he gets a percentage of everyone in his jersey sales.
Oh yeah.
So they wanted to like basically shadow ban him and his stock pick, because the more famous he is and the more they sell, they owe him more money.
I probably believe it. Probably something
he
like
has
that.
Apparently a super unique NFL contract.
Damn.
That's interesting. I would love to see
I gotta do
that.
some more research, but
And that Browns fan base, bro, they have been through some shit. They are happy for everything to come that way. So
Well,
they
everybody
rocking
buying them jerseys. And did y'all see the price of tickets for that preseason game after he announced that he was gonna be the starter?
Crazy.
Bro, that shit went from $12 to $150.
At Colorado, Shedeur Sanders generated consistent national attention through performance, media presence, and high-visibility moments that elevated the program's profile. That positioning aligns with what Nike seeks, not only athletes, but figures who influence culture and drive conversation. The brand signs leaders who can shape markets, athletes whose impact shows up in audience growth, engagement, and partner interest, not just in weekly box scores. Many evaluations missed this broader picture by focusing narrowly on passer ratings and comparisons that failed to capture Sanders' reach and commercial pool. Nike's history reinforces the approach. Michael Jordan became a global identity, LeBron James matured into a generational centerpiece from day one, and Serena Williams reshaped both competitive standards and style narratives. The decision to back Shedeur Sanders fits within that framework, a calculated investment in a quarterback with crossover appeal, measurable momentum, and a recognizable lineage. It signals that Nike views his value as extending beyond on-field results to sustain brand relevance and long-term market impact.
Hey, bro. Can we keep it a bean, dog? He shouldn't have been no 5th round pick, dog. He should not have been a 5th round pick. Now, he plays on the Browns. I'm a Steelers fan, so, like, him doing well, it's like, do I really want to see him? Not really. I'm rooting for the brother, though. I'm rooting for him. Probably the one Cleveland Brown player I root for. But 14 of 23, 138 passing yards, 2 TDs. He missed a couple throws here and there. I was like, damn, Shedeur, really? You missed that? You missed that throw?
Was it early? Many analysts argue yes. That view reflects an older assumption that endorsement value tracks narrowly with box score output. In 2025, brand decisions weigh audience reach, reliability of attention, and cultural relevance alongside performance. Shedeur Sanders doesn't only produce plays, he generates sustained visibility across platforms and demographics. Nike prioritizes athletes who can maintain conversation even between games. Sanders delivers consistent engagement, repeatable storylines, and measurable spikes in impressions when he appears, factors that translate directly into marketing efficiency. This is less about highlight reels alone and more about dependable distribution, an athlete who moves awareness, traffic, and product sell-through. Recent commentary suggested the NIL market was cooling and that brands would tighten spend. This announcement points the other way. A flagship commitment from Nike undercuts the caution-first narrative and affirms that attention with durability still commands premium terms. Whether audiences tune in to support him or to critique him, the net effect is the same: predictable viewership that reduces campaign risk. The implications extend beyond one signing. This elevates expectations for top college athletes and shifts negotiations toward quantifiable reach, conversion, and content output. Where the question once centered on whether emerging stars could secure 6- or 7-figure packages, the discussion now moves to structure, multi-year horizons, equity or revenue components, creative control, and integrated media plans. Brands will benchmark against Sanders' deal, and athletes will price to the standard it sets.
The clause is called prime equity. This clause gives Sanders a percentage of revenue generated from merchandise, sponsorships, and promotions linked to his name and likeness.
When they got NIL in the NFL.
Oh yeah, that's why people ain't fucking with him.
That's what they said. It wasn't that his character was stupid. They was trying
He's so smart.
Yeah, that's why he got picked so far back, because apparently his agents wanted this clause in the contract.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Shedeur Sanders' agreement establishes a new benchmark for athlete marketing. It confirms that brands will invest at scale when a player demonstrates influence beyond performance, being able to sustain attention, shape narratives, and move product across platform. For the NIL market, the standard shifts from pure statistics to a broader profile: audience reliability, cultural relevance, and content output that can anchor campaigns. There is also an NFL draft dimension. Visibility and expectations intensify when a prospect carries both a high-profile surname and a flagship brand relationship. As Deion Sanders' son and now a leading Nike partner, every snap will be evaluated as a proof point. Strong stretches will be read as validation of the investment. Mistakes will draw outsized scrutiny. The spotlight becomes a constant variable in his development. This deal reflects a family strategy as much as an individual one. Deion Sanders understands sports branding and has built a repeatable playbook around it. Nike did more than sign a quarterback. It aligned with a multi-generational platform that consistently commands attention. Analysts who framed this as a single athlete decision missed the leverage of the broader enterprise. The Sanders name functions like an established asset, recognizable, durable, and connected to a large, engaged audience. Nike's bet is not only on Shedeur's on-field trajectory, but on the continuity of a legacy brand that spans eras. The value proposition is clear: storyline, lineage, and long-term market impact, with on-field results serving as an accelerant rather than the sole driver.
I think Shedeur can play. I thought he was the best quarterback in college football a year ago. Okay, he was supposed to be the #1 pick 6 months before the draft. It paid 1-to-1, from an odds standpoint. But Will, and I know how. I already know how this is going to go. I already know how this is going to be received by a lot of people, because I'm going to be labeled a hater or even worse.
What comes next is expansion. This agreement is not only a payout, it is a platform. The core question is no longer whether Shedeur Sanders will succeed, but how far his brand can scale before he takes an NFL snap. Signature footwear, dedicated apparel, and placement in major Nike campaigns are all realistic pathways, potentially arriving before his rookie season begins. That scope is why the announcement is drawing sustained attention. The reaction also reflects an admitted miss by many observers. They undervalued the shift toward athletes who can carry conversation and commerce between games. Nike anticipated that change and moved early. The immediate task is to assess the broader impact on college athletics, the NIL market, and competing brands that now have to reprice and reposition. In practical terms, this deal sets new expectations for structure and visibility. It ties Sanders to a global distribution engine and makes each appearance a measurable marketing event. The narrative is straightforward. Nike identified durable attention, aligned with it, and formalized the bet. The market will adjust to the standard this creates.
Honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7, they're throwing dimes. In practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We've seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first-team guys. Then they throw Dillon Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dillon always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, you know, they should be on the team. You know, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, you know, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player. You know, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised, and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelce has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelce's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
you got a problem.
You have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised. When you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback, you do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelce's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible Plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that had the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelce's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear: stabilize the system, diversify cap usage, and build depth at key positions so the offense functions regardless of who is under center. That includes a coherent development pathway for younger talent such as Shedeur Sanders, with defined practice reps, protection, and scheme alignment. Kelce didn't say anything outrageous. He articulated the gap between a brief surge and a credible long-term contender.
Have the faith of a mustard seed. Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you. You're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
The Browns' quarterback situation remains unsettled. Deshaun Watson was expected to be the long-term answer, but injuries and inconsistent play have prevented him from reaching an elite level. When the team turned to Joe Flacco after Watson's season deteriorated, Flacco immediately lifted the offense and produced results that highlighted the gap between expectations and reality. That a 39-year-old late addition could outperform a $230 million starter was not just a short-term surprise, it raised fundamental questions about roster construction and evaluation. Quarterback depth has been fragile, and the late-season surge masked broader structural problems. Jason Kelce's remarks made that clear. Cleveland is vulnerable if the starter is unavailable, cap flexibility is limited, and the offensive plan lacks a stable contingency. His critique drew attention to leadership and planning as much as on-field performance. Jimmy Haslam's strong reaction reflects the pressure on ownership. The organization has promoted a message of stability and progress, but Kelce's assessment suggested those gains are not yet durable. The path forward requires a realistic approach to the cap, a credible backup plan at quarterback, and a system that holds up regardless of personnel.